It's not uncommon for couples to struggle with sexual intimacy, especially in a narcissistic abusive relationship. This is often a sign that the narcissist is becoming disillusioned. In the love bombing phase, sex is used as a way to augment the bonding, to create a tight emotional connection with the victim. But once the newness of the relationship wears off and real life sets in, the charm of sex begins to fade. Partly because narcissists avoid the vulnerability of intimacy. Fantastic intimate sex requires us to show up as our real self. That risks being known or found out, along with rejection and shame. But also for narcissists, committed relationships become boring. There is no rush, no thrill. So they move on. But narcissists aren't the only ones who struggle with sexual intimacy in the bedroom. Other relationships can suffer from this problem as well. On October 20th, I'm joining a panel of experts to discuss sex and marital coercion, and sexual intimacy. It's a live webinar called Isn't Having Sex My Right? I would love to see you there for this timely discussion. The tickets are $20 and all ticket holders are going to receive a free replay after the event concludes. Be sure to get your ticket through the link in today's show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today on Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse. I'm your host, Dr. Carrie Kerr-McAvoy, a mental health specialist with over 20 years of counseling experience and a narcissistic abuse survivor. In this podcast episode, we're going to address why some couples experience a loss of sexual intimacy in the bedroom. We'll also explore the defense mechanisms narcissists prefer to use, why hoovering is so prevalent, and what causes so many victims to fear romantic relationships after abuse. Thank you so much for subscribing to this show. Please leave a review and let us know what you think. And this is a listener-supported podcast, and I deeply appreciate your contribution. So, with that, let's listen into this replay of a TikTok Live. I'm going to be part of a sexual coercion or marital coercion seminar coming up in October, late October, so watch for that. Advertisements coming up on it. So I'll be part of the panel talking about it. So it kind of shows up in two ways. There is a dysfunction that happens in relationships. So one is there's a coercive component, and also there's often a sexual withdrawal component. And I was married to a self-professed sex addict, and I know the first thing people think is that we had lots of sex. I'm telling you, we didn't. We actually were on the opposite end. Now, I hung around Facebook groups with other people who were in relationships with sex addicts, and some of them did do that there was an excessive activity, almost an effort to sort of prevent acting out. If they could have enough sex, maybe they wouldn't do bad things. By the way, it never works. That doesn't work. Please know that doesn't work. Because the acting out of it, by the way, is not about intimacy. It's not about being physically close. It's about distracting yourself from your bad feelings and all the things inside of you. It's actually a defense mechanism. So it won't work because they can't run away from themselves. They are a problem. But they're often, what happens, I've seen this a lot in abusive relationship, narcissistic abusive relationship, there's a disinterest in the partner. Once the love bombing phase is over, and this person's the mask is being slipped, and they're also starting to become disillusioned with their partner, it's very common for them to also become sexually disinterested as well, because their interest, all their energy is already moving forward to a new or multiple new relationships at the same time. And one of the ways, if you guys got to hear the webinar on Thursday last week, one of the things Dr. Milstead says are 5 points to love bombing, and the last point is they use sexual or intimate experience as a way to bond us. We have these big, huge, incredible moments, and in order to get all the kind of the biological cocktail going that help finish the trauma bond, help finish bonding you to them. So they use intimacy as a way to do that. Well, if they're already moving that on to somebody else, then the interest in you has already disappeared. And they don't know, they're really good at getting a relationship started, but they don't know how to make a relationship last. So they don't know how to shift from infatuation to attachment. They don't get attached to their partners. So then there's no commitment, no sacrifice, no learning how to build a relationship with somebody, which is a big transition, by the way. I don't know if you ever thought of that, but to move from this flurry of interest. Oh my goodness, I think they love me. Oh, they're so fantastic. To, wow, I want to have life with them. I want to have set goals with them. Let's how we do that together. Let's plan how we do that together. That takes a big shift. It's a big mental, psychological, relational shift, one of which they don't know how to do, can't do well. And for them, that's boring. There's no interest there. So when there's no interest there, then that interest dries up and they move on to the next, the big flame, the big attachment flame. So it's fascinating, but painful. So as a result, I'm back to the question. I'm trying to remember what the question was. The question is, why is there withdrawal? Well, withdrawal is because there's disinterest. I know I have met somebody. I had this happen a lot in the office. I'd meet this woman. Usually it was women. I very rarely met a man. I'm not saying it doesn't happen to men. I'm sure it does. But I'll meet this really nice woman. She'll tell me her partner is her friend. They're close. They work well together. There's no problem. They're doing well together. But the relationship has moved into more roommates. And the sex has disappeared. And she doesn't know what's wrong. She thinks that something's wrong with her. And she wants me to come in and help. I'll tell you, after seeing this a few times, and now I've personally experienced it, I knew what was going on. This is what I would say, and I was always right. I'd say to her, I'm going to tell you to do something that's super uncomfortable. I want you to start checking into their accounts. Who are they talking to with email? Who are they chatting with? What groups are they in? What are they doing on Facebook or elsewhere? I said, they're doing something with somebody else. Really? Oh, no, that's not possible. My partner would never do that. And then they'll come in white-faced the next session and say, how did you know? Well, I knew because the lack of interest in the relationship. They're not putting any energy into your relationship with them. All the energy is going somewhere else. Not that this person doesn't have any sexual energy. Yes, there are those relationships that are just asexual. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about that once had a sexual relationship and now it's disappeared. It's because it's going elsewhere. So I would be warned. That to me that's a tip-off. You guys heard of DARVO? It stands for deflect, attack, reverse victim, offend, or offender. That's how they flip it. So the first rule of thumb with DARVO, for anyone who kind of knows what the strategy is, you deflect from whatever you're being hit with. So say, for example, let's go back to the analogy I used earlier with, let's talk about how we pick up kids after school. It's going wrong, and you're the person who's doing the pickup. So if your partner said that to you, you would deflect and say, I can never please you around anything, can I? See, there's the deflection. You deflect. By the way, that's also an attack. So that was both. That's a D and an A. I can never please you. In other words, you're saying you're hard to please. There's the attack. Reverse, I already did that too. The reverse victim happened too. I'm the victim because you coming at me and telling me there's a problem, you've now offended me and hurt me. So actually it's all three of them. And it makes them the offender for bringing it up. See, so isn't that perfect? So that's DARVO, DARVO. But why do they do that? Why make us out to be crazy, to say we're the narcissist and why avoid the problem? Because the problem is really about, can't we come up with a solution with what to do about pick up with kids after school, right? It seems pretty simple, pretty basic. Why is this a drama? Well, there's a couple reasons why. One is that, as I said about the egos, it's a whenever you bring up a problem, and it doesn't matter what it's about. Like, can we put clothes in the hamper instead of on the floor? Or, do you mind if we do this differently? That people with more fragile egos don't hear this as actually a conversation about a problem. They see it as a personal attack on them, that you've attacked them because you've brought this up. That's the first problem, is personalized. It wasn't meant to be personalized, but it was personalized. And a really great way to handle something that feels attacking, if you're really in a perspective of the world's at war, and unfortunately, people with more fragile egos, particularly narcissists and psychopaths/sociopaths, they see the world literally like it's dog eat dog. In the Squid Game when there was that tug of war and the losing team is going to die? That's how they feel about every conflict or everything that comes up. It's if they lose this point, it's like loss, the self is annihilated. There's a loss of death of self over it. So they're going to come out with, fists swinging on this. And the really great way is to say that you're the problem. Well, here's the other problem with this whole thing. People with personality disorders don't really actually have a problem in their minds because the problem is with their personality, not a problem that they're suffering from. So they're not in pain over the way that they live and deal with life. You're the one in pain. So they literally didn't have a problem until they have a problem with you. Now, I know they bring up problems because they're really great at criticism and all of that. They do that. But we tend to be easygoing, so we just like, well, what can I do to make the relationship work? We don't tend to react personally as much. I'm not saying we're perfect at it, because I for sure am not perfect at it, but I'm just saying that we're more on the end of wanting everything to work out, so we're a little more motivated in making it work out. Yeah, so that's why they do that. It's a Darvo attack. It's a way to deflect, make the issue not them. But it also is because the personality problems just don't see themselves as having the problem. Have you considered having a one-on-one session with me in person? Maybe you'd like to have a clarity appointment. I'm offering 15 and 30-minute sessions at the upcoming Narc Avengers Austin meet and greet in the morning of October 15th. I would love to be able to sit down with you, hear more about what you're struggling with, and maybe give you some suggestions. Or maybe you'd like to meet all 10 of the Narc Avengers who are going to be present at the meet and greet. Ask us some questions about narcissistic abuse and our path to recovery. There's going to be a special VIP Q&A, 90-minute long forum that afternoon. Be sure to sign up today since seating is limited, and pre-registration is required and available through the link in the show notes. Why would a narcissist be obsessing over my current man? Why would a malignant, I can't say that right, malignant? No, I still can't do it. A malignant, there I did it. Malignant narcissist be obsessed over who you're currently seeing. Yeah, that's super, super common. And that's why hoovering is a problem too. That's why hoovering never stops, or the risk of hoovering never stops. And also why they never let go, and they are always like forever continuing watching your social media profiles. And the reason is because they're collectors is what they are. And they don't really see people, as individuals with dreams, hope, goals of their own. They see people as objects, like something that you're excited to have in your life, like a really great Rolls Royce, or maybe you really wanted that Tesla or whatever. They collect people. And so even though they may say, oh, the thrill's off of driving you around, you're the Tesla that they've been looking for. Now that the thrill is off and there's a better car that's come around that they really got to try out and they can't wait, it's a new Mercedes, version or whatever. They then store you away and they let you go. They discard you, or you get tired of all of it and you walk out and you do the discard. But however that all works, in their mind, they've not really let go of you. They own you. And as a result, they feel like then whenever there's not enough supply in their life, or maybe they just have a hankering to go back to the Tesla because they kind of miss some things about the Tesla, they'll go back and take it out for another test drive. That's the hoovering that happens. But you're never, ever actually gone. And, here's the wild thing is, you'd think there's an expiration date on this. Like, oh, they've got to have forgotten about me because it's been 10 years and my life's moved on. I hardly think about them these days. No, they never stop thinking about you. You never are not out of their mind at some level. You're always like sitting back there somewhere. Literally, it's like they have these massive warehouses with cars covered in tarps, dust tarps, and periodically they want to come back and they just want to revisit for whatever reason. For whatever reason. It is the strangest thing, but it comes back to their their difficulty with seeing people as real people. That's why in psychology, if you ever do some reading up on personality theory, and particularly get into psychodynamic object relations theory, Object relations theory says that to be a wholly functioning person, you should see other people as also independently wholly functioning people. That's called a whole object. You see them as in their entirety intact, and you appreciate their autonomy and their uniqueness, and you celebrate that, and you want really good things for them. But most of us, I hate to tell you, most of us never get there. We don't fully see anybody wholly individual. We try. Some of us are closer than others, but most of us, and those who are more pathological or even worse, they're farther down the line, we see each other as part objects, which means we objectify each other and we see things as transactional or conditional. We don't fully appreciate a person's needs and the degree that they're separate from us and celebrate that and really protect that. We just don't. We struggle with that. And like I said, pathological narcissism really struggles with this. So does most of the personality disorders really struggle with this. That's why if you, like I said, do any reading, you'll see that is referred to a part object relationship. It's an I-it instead of an I-you or I-thou. I should see you as you and me as me, but instead I see you as an it and I'm a me. And that's the problem. They treat things like an it. I hope that makes sense, because I'm getting a little bit into theory there. If there isn't any active conflict, then why do they accuse us of stuff that we're not doing? What is that all about? Why accuse us of being the narcissist or being dishonest or cheating or all of that? Why accuse us of this stuff? That's called projection. So our mind doesn't like things that can't handle. It doesn't like being stressed. The way that it copes with being stressed is it has to find a way to kind of like anesthetize it or get rid of it or detoxify it from ourselves. And from birth, it starts to happen. The minute you're born, your mind already is protecting yourself and has ways to do that. And it has very early primitive defense mechanisms. One of them is denial. Denial is have you ever watched a movie and you just know there's a bad part because the music changes? So you jump up and leave the room, or maybe you crouch down so you can't see the TV, or you cover your eyes. That's a physical example of denial. Whenever you're doing that, you're actually practicing a literal, you're acting out denial. But we also do denial in a lot of, indirect ways. We just act like it's not happening. I'll never forget that I saw a family member hear other family members talking about doing something illegal, and she just said, I don't want to know about it. I don't want to know about it. I mean, she knew about it. We were discussing it in front of her. But her reaction was, I don't want to know about that. That's denial. That's an example of denial. But one of them, which is what you're talking about, that this accusing you of false things, is projection. So projection is a wild thing. It's really wild. And the person who's doing it it's kind of done subconsciously, sort of semi-conscious, but sort of not conscious, not entirely conscious. They are doing something they're not supposed to be doing. They know they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing, and it causes tension inside of them. They may not be aware of the tension. They may be not focusing on that. Is it denial? I don't know, but they're not focusing on it. But the way that they're coping with the tension is instead they offload it onto someone else. So they attribute those attributes to you. You're the one who's cheating, even though they're the one who's cheating. Or you're the liar, even though they're lying to you on a regular basis. This is a way that they sort of deal with this uncomfortable internal experience, is to get upset about it, but instead of getting upset about it and changing themselves, they get upset about it with you and then accuse you of doing it. There's another one that's very similar called reaction formation. I bet you've not heard of that because we rarely talk about it. It's like, what a wild name, right? Reaction formation. An easy way to explain this one is, have you ever seen one of these? Unfortunately, we have it acted out in front of us all too often, where this televangelist who's really anti-something, maybe they're homophobic, or maybe they're really against promiscuous sex or sex outside of marriage. And so they'll go on this big, huge, like crusade about stopping whatever they think this wrong thing is. And then you find out that they're doing it, that they've been guilty of that very thing the whole time. So that's another way it kind of gets manifested, is that we have a reaction to whatever we can't tolerate within ourselves. We kind of loathe it within ourselves. So we then, whenever we see it around us, we attack it. as a way to deny its existence in our life, and as a way, almost like we're trying to work out our inability to fix it within ourselves. It's very strange. Projection's another, like, different but similar. You instead of you dealing with yourself, you just sort of accuse people around you of doing it. So here's the thing. Irregardless of which it is, I want you to take note. You hear somebody really on a rant about something, I mean, like on a rant about it, or accusing you of false things you know that they know is not real, they're confessing. They're confessing. So now now you are be able to sort of protect yourself better when you hear that. You're like, oh, I remember way back in the day, this is way back before we were in, I think we just gotten engaged, we were close, the relationship was pretty young. My partner told me, my soon-to-be partner told me that he knew somebody who was having an affair, and he wondered what I thought about that. And we talked about this couple that were having problems in their relationship. I never knew that he was cheating, that was actually projection. He wasn't accusing me of it or them of it. He was just talking to me about it. I didn't know that the reason that he was so fascinated in the topic was because he was actually applied to him. But now if I hear somebody bring it up, I'll tell you, bells are going to go off, and I'm going to be following up with a lot more questions, that's for sure, a lot more questions. There's a long-term narcissistic relationship has been healing for 5 years and was in a long-term relationship with a narcissist. She's been healing for 5 years. She's now dating, and everyone wants to get serious with her. When she finds herself they want to get serious, she gets scared and runs away. Is that normal? Oh my, how many of us can relate to her? I have a feeling a lot of us can. What's happened is that you're still feeling a betrayal, a loss of trust in the relationship, but also a loss of trust with yourself. And as a result, you're having a really hard time stepping into another relationship for fear of repetition. And it's probably triggering all of that. I would recommend that you get EMDR. Have you heard of that? It's a really effective therapy. It's a mind-body treatment style that uses physical stimuli along with memory to help disconnect or decouple the traumatic memories from your emotions. And it's really shown a lot of success. And that's an important thing for all of us that are trying to heal after abuse, is that we do really want to make sure we do things that are both mind-body, because the trauma is not just stored in our logic, it's stored in our emotions and in our body, physical self. It's stored in our soul, stored multiple places. So it's really important that we do work that kind of bridges across of that. And EMDR is a really nice way to do that. It's one of the good ones to do that. But it's super common. And here's another piece that I want to kind of pass along as a way to talk to you about this, is that back to when, if I don't know, you caught what I was talking about earlier about cognitive dissonance, but you feel like you missed something, that you can't trust yourself because they got you to distrust yourself. That's part of gaslighting. Gaslighting makes you substitute your reality, what you know, for their reality. Well, then you find out that it was all false and that you did that, so you betrayed yourself. You see the logic, the line of logic? What has to heal, part of the back end of healing from this, is to realize that you need to rebuild trust with yourself and to work through your own betrayal of yourself. And your fear that you're going to make the mistake again. That's why you're afraid. Before you were confident. You said, I know myself. I make good decisions. Look how well I've done in my life. Look how, I've made purchases. I've done things. I've accomplished things. Finished school. Got a job. I do well at my job. But this really breached your sense of trust in yourself. And as a result of that, you're scared you're going to do this again. So you get into something that starts to see like a possibility, and you back away out of fear. So a big piece of healing is we have to heal around ourselves. I know it's like, forgive yourself. Why would I say that? Well, but you've injured yourself. So forgiveness to me doesn't mean like, oh, I forgive. I mean, like, make peace with it, understand, make sense of it, process it, know how you're going to stand up next time and have a little bit better sense of how you're going to meet challenges, how you're going to know if someone's safe or not. Have a different plan so you feel safer going forward. But know this is the part that I think is so pivotal for all of us. We were targeted and groomed by people who are more sophisticated at this than a lot of criminals are. They've had years of practice, many, many relationships. Every relationship that fails, they learn to do better. So you met a very skilled offender. This is not your failure. This is a fact that you met the wrong person. And knowing that can really help you make peace with it and come to terms with it.
Thank you so much for joining me today. How's your healing been going after abuse? What part's been particularly difficult? Drop me a note and let me know. I would love to hear from you. And I look forward to seeing you back here on Monday. Have a great weekend. Until then, bye-bye.